When I was first diagnosed with celiac disease 35 years ago, I weighed 90 pounds and was literally starving to death. After months of pain and testing, I was so relieved to find out that through diet and nutrition alone, my health could be restored. That was the first time I realized just how powerful food could be as medicine. That journey of health led me to my interest in nutrition and alternative medicine. I eventually got my Master of Herbology from the School of Natural Healing and have continued my studies in areas such as anti-aging nutrition, hormone regulation, autoimmunity, brain and mood health, eating psychology, and functional nutrition. I believe that a holistic approach is absolutely essential to good health, and it includes physical, emotional, relational, and spiritual wellness. The physiological and psychological connection is a key component to my approach to wellness. I served as an emotional wellness facilitator for the last 13 years and have helped other people to process through those emotional roadblocks. Through my experience, I have seen how our individual beliefs, based on our interpretation of events, shape our present reality. We are often unaware of how these beliefs are hindering us in achieving our most important life goals. I'm Sandy Casciato. I hope that the information I will be sharing will provide some new insights for you that will help you in your own personal journey towards better health. My intention is to help sort out the truth from the marketing propaganda that has not served us well for the last 30 years. Our health is predicted to continue declining as sickness and disease continues to escalate. This present generation of children is the first in over 200 years not expected to outlive their parents. I believe that together we can change those odds for current and future generations. Please keep in mind that the information I'm providing is for educational purposes only and is in no way intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent disease or sickness. And it does not replace the qualified care of a licensed physician. So let's get started.
I would like to discuss 3 common myths that may be sabotaging your health. The first is that all calories are equal. While it is true that all calories have the same amount of energy, the effect on the body can vary greatly based on the nutritional value of that calorie. If you're using a low-calorie approach to weight loss and fitness, there are a few problems with that. Well, first of all, it'll slow your metabolism and you will therefore burn less calories. In the process, you may lose muscle mass. It's not satisfying and it leads to more cravings, so you cannot maintain it over time. Eventually, you will end up gaining more weight than losing in the long run. And if you're substituting low-quality foods with a low-calorie diet, that's even more disastrous. For example, refined carbohydrates and sugar. If they're part of your low-calorie diet, the brain doesn't receive satiety signals with refined foods. Therefore, it'll spike your insulin and it will trigger cravings for more food, and particularly carbs and sugar. This creates excess fat storage. On the other hand, if you're eating high-quality food, such as nutrient-dense vegetables and clean protein and fiber, this requires more energy for your body to process, and it also increases metabolism, which burns more fat, and your insulin is being raised gradually, so you're satisfied for a longer period of time. The key here is to focus on high-quality food, but not too much of it. In fact, my recommendation is that you eat until you are no longer hungry. So how do you determine which foods are best? The handy tool for that would be the glycemic index. Lower GI foods tend to be less refined and have more fiber, and they provide a slow, steady release of energy. Whereas the high GI foods cause that rapid release in glucose levels, and that triggers an insulin spike, which leads to cravings and eventually fatigue. So the cumulative daily impact of the glycemic load is what impacts our health the most. Second myth is that fat makes you fat. For decades, we have been hearing and believing that cholesterol and fat, particularly saturated fat, causes weight gain and heart disease. The truth is, studies that have been conducted for the past few decades conclusively show that neither saturated fat nor dietary cholesterol cause harm in human beings. So let's go back to 1970. Ansel Keys was a researcher at the University of Minnesota, and during that time he convinced the world that saturated fat consumption is the best dietary predictor of heart disease. However, his data was flawed, as the diets that he referenced with fat were not only rich in saturated fat, but they were also high in sugar. And it was actually sugar that was causing the cardiovascular problems that he observed in his research. I guess it's not real surprising that sugar was omitted from his research findings, because as early as 1944, his research was funded by the sugar industry. And their goal was to find something other than sugar that was contributing to heart disease and diabetes. So in 1980, they released the first USDA dietary guidelines, and here's what they concluded. Too much sugar does not cause diabetes. Fat was the villain, and it needed to be removed from the American diet. And that carbs were actually good, and that Americans were encouraged to increase their carbohydrates. Well, based on these guidelines, the food industry started removing fat and adding lots of sugar to compensate for the lack of flavor once the fat was gone from the foods. And at the same time, in direct correlation with these changes, Americans started getting fatter and more diabetic. And as fat and cholesterol decreased in our diets, serious diseases have continued to go up. We have current worldwide pandemics of obesity and type 2 diabetes. Skimping on fat actually drives up your cravings for sugar and more food in general. The real problem is inflammation, and the solution is to increase the consumption of healthy fats and to decrease carbohydrates. Myth number 3, it's your fault. Have you ever felt that way? I mean, after all, 70% of Americans are overweight, and that number is predicted to continue increasing. The message that we've been hearing for decades is take personal responsibility, eat less, and exercise more. The truth is, the food industry has intentionally hijacked our brain chemistry for profit. Big Food consists of about 12 companies that control most of the $1 trillion food industry. Millions are spent on craving experts to ensure that we become addicted to their foods. In fact, some of the same researchers that are working for the food industry used to work for the tobacco industry for the same purpose. There are 600,000 processed food items, and 80% contain added unnecessary sugar. What's the reason for that? Well, I'll tell you. Sugar, it's as addictive as cocaine and more addictive than morphine. In fact, the pleasure center of the brain lights up when sugar is consumed and triggers a craving for further consumption. Excess sugar consumption produces an insulin surge, which blocks leptin signals, so you think that you're starving when you're actually full. And they are relentlessly pursuing our children. They're the first generation in over 200 years not expected to outlive their parents. And the number one cause of obesity? Sugar-sweetened beverages. So why is it that 80% of the schools in this country have contracts with soda manufacturers? Is it really worth the cost? And don't think artificial sweeteners are the answer. They're actually worse. They slow your metabolism, they make you hungrier, and genetically program you to crave more sugar and carbs. You're actually at a higher risk for diabetes with artificial sweeteners than you are with sugar. And the most insidious of all sweeteners is high fructose corn syrup. It's really cheap, so it's everywhere. In fact, it represents more than 40% of caloric sweeteners added to food and beverages. The introduction of high fructose corn syrup into our diets directly correlates with the beginning of the obesity epidemic. It has been proven to literally punch holes in the intestinal lining, allowing toxic gut bacteria and food proteins to enter your bloodstream, which triggers inflammation. Fructose, unlike glucose, goes directly to your liver, where it triggers the production of triglycerides and cholesterol, and it causes liver damage. All of this sugar consumption is leading to insulin resistance, which affects 1 in 4 people in the United States. With insulin resistance, your body is producing the insulin but doesn't know how to use it effectively. Glucose builds up in the bloodstream instead of being absorbed by the cells. Most people don't even know they have insulin resistance until after they develop type 2 diabetes. This can often be prevented or delayed by making changes in eating habits and lifestyle. And in addition to type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance also can lead to cardiovascular disease and Alzheimer's disease, which is now being called type 3 diabetes because of the direct effect of sugar. So, what can you do today? First of all, question all advertising. Consider the source, the motivation, and the funding. Money is the language of big business, and we vote with our dollars. Remove refined sugars and carbs. It's just adding to that addictive cycle. And artificial sweeteners, don't use them at all. Natural sugars, your body recognizes them: fruit, honey, maple syrup, coconut sugar, but you still need to limit those as well. My suggestion is 24 grams in 24 hours. Another thing we can do is being mindful about eating. So often we're rushed and we're consuming food and we're distracted. Just be mindful of what you're eating and enjoy eating. Planning ahead goes a long way as well. Enlist a friend. Statistics prove that we are more successful in achieving our fitness goals when we team up with others. Now it's your turn. What 1 or 2 things can you commit to starting today? I would love to have your feedback. Any thoughts or concerns or questions, please share. Till then, I wish you peace, love, and vibrant health. See you soon.